It can't stop the day we dissect the news. Flipping on the edge, choices to choose. Politics and laughter, a blend that's so real. Tuning for the stories that make you feel. With guests from every angle, let's bridge the divide. Finding the truth in the humor we can't hide.
And on that bombshell, we're starting a podcast.
Okay, get it going, boys.
Okay,
all right.
So it's been a couple weeks, bro.
We are back in the saddle.
I know. Here
Feels
we go.
right.
Here we go.
It?
It feels amazing, actually.
Yeah.
I feel better. The wife is not feeling as good.
Yeah. Forever, never
but,
get well.
But today we're
here.
going to have an awesome episode here. We're going to have a guest with us. This is Dr. Elena Svetieva.
Nicely pronounced.
Yeah, and she is an expert in leadership, and we're going to be diving into that stuff today and whatnot. I have to read our little disclaimer. You want to do it or me?
No, go ahead. You already had it pulled up. It's a mission statement.
Yes.
It is our mission statement, which is not 5 words. So we've already broken the
Cardinal
laws
rule.
of business.
I think
Sorry.
the vision is 5 words. The mission can be longer. Isn't that the way it goes?
Do tell. I don't know. Are we supposed to? Okay,
Go.
so welcome to the Prime Directive. This is a podcast with a bold mission to explore this strange new world by discussing a range of topics of interest to us. We ask that any watchers join us and listen with an open mind. Look with your human eyes to thoughtfully interact and to share your thoughts in the comment sections, please. Please keep them respectful, right?
Doesn't it say it says respectful?
Yeah, usually respectful.
Yay.
Usually. Or good fart jokes. I like fart jokes too. Those are.
I was going to say, aren't we going to already address the disrespectful comments first?
Yeah, I mean, or sarcastic.
Sarcastic.
Or, yeah.
Oh,
Okay, we're seeking life
irreverent.
forms, willing to engage in respectful discourse. We put the civil in civilization. Okay, so welcome, Elena.
Welcome indeed.
Yeah,
Great to have you.
I know. So we have known you. This is my wife and I. We've known you for a number of years now, and been graced by your presence with us and helping us rethink about the concepts of leadership and whatnot. We can kind of get into that. It might be a great place to just start to just chat about your journey, where you come from, why leadership, what was the angle that drove you in that direction, and then we'll go from there.
We can start simple. Tell us everything you've done from birth to now.
I was going to ask.
In a nice synopsis and outline now. Right? I mean, I know for me it's been music. That's the guiding, that's the memories and stuff up here. For Liesl, it was the circus. She was driven to follow the clowns and even married one.
Well, Elena, and I just want to say Elena is very special to me because she is my colleague at the University of Colorado, and we're in the same department, in the same concentration. So partners in crime, and just so fortunate to work with her. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think, with my story, probably like many people, I kind of like stumbled my way into leadership. That is not something that I ever thought that I would study or that I'd be interested in. I was a psychology major in my undergrad at the University of Sydney, and then I thought, all right, well, let's go do the PhD. And the person that I wanted to work with, his name was Dr. Mark Frank, and he was in a communication department at SUNY Buffalo. So I ended up studying with him, and he was a deception expert. He was somebody that, this was the post 9/11 era. There was a lot of kind of grant money being funneled into deception research, trying to understand what the nonverbal and other indicators of deception were. And I thought that was fascinating. I did my thesis on that in undergrad, and that's what I wanted to study. I wanted to study deception and nonverbal behavior and people. And so that was sort of 6 years of my life, watching videos frame by frame, annotating them for facial expressions, slight movements, thumb twitches.
Really?
You name it. Yeah.
What about heavy breathing? Like things such as...
we didn't necessarily look at that. I remember back in the day, we had some pretty fancy equipment, including sort of like basically lasers that can measure your pulse. So, you would be able to point to somebody's neck, and you could actually, from the movement of the skin, you could realize how fast their heart was beating. So this was meant to be all unobtrusive ways of figuring out when somebody's lying.
Like that show Lie to Me and the micro expressions.
Indeed, exactly, yeah.
That's fascinating.
And so Mark Frank worked with Paul Ekman. Paul Ekman is also
yes.
I guess, I don't know, scientific consultant on that show. I think Paul Ekman just turned 91, so it's
91.
Yeah.
Oh wow! So he's been around a while.
Yeah.
Okay, and lucky.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
That is incredible. So, tell me a little bit just about so you watched videos of people, criminals,
no, these were experiments that we ran in the lab. So we actually had former retired FBI folks come in and do an interrogation interview with people, and so it was all set up so that they had the chance to steal a check and then lie about it.
Oh wow!
So they both chose to steal or not steal, and then if they were successful at lying about it, they got to get a reward. And if they were not successful, they were threatened with punishment, and it was going to be 90 decibel noise blast or something like that.
Oh my gosh! Wow. Okay.
So it was, the whole thing was designed to be extremely realistic. We wanted to be able to capture people's face, on camera and body as well. We had cameras, face frames and full body frames.
Does that affect the honesty when you're talking to a camera? Does it affect? Did you find that it's?
Well, that was seen as okay because, in most high stakes interrogations, that's exactly what's happening, right? You're being scrutinized, you're being recorded, whether you're in a police station or whatnot, or you're being interrogated for, terrorist activity. So that was, I'm sure it does change people's behavior, right?
Yeah,
Can you imagine?
Oh yeah, being on camera, I think about how just even conversations that are just casual become very, the feel, just the zeitgeist just kind of changes. Right from the get-go and whatnot.
Yeah.
So,
and imagine
everything's recorded.
What's that?
Everything's recorded.
Everything's recorded
these
nowadays,
days, yeah, I know.
But, back then, you could also choose not to take the check, but if you weren't able to convince the interrogator, you were still punished.
Oh, almost like the Milgram experiment, right?
Yeah.
The shocks,
Right. Nobody was punished, but
Which,
they
by the
were
way,
threatened with it. Yeah.
I can hear the dialing up
the 90 decibels,
Yeah.
which to me,
Yeah,
if you've ever spent anywhere,
Oh,
anytime
it's
near
terrible.
any elementary school, 90 decibels, that's not punishment. That's just day to day.
That's
Right.
That's 8
Or
o'clock.
middle school.
No,
Or middle
I was
school.
going to say that's 8 o'clock before the kids come in. It's we
That's
put
the
on
hallway.
earplugs and-
That's the hallway.
Yeah.
Any give between periods.
And at the end of the day too, it's just get the F out of here.
So you're suggesting just 90 decibels? Please don't threaten me with a good time.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I know. So that's fascinating. And so you went through that whole thing. You said Buffalo, is that right? In Buffalo?
Yeah, SUNY Buffalo.
And then how did we get blessed or just gifted by you out here? Because I can't understand. There's Liesl before you came to the university. There is. I know my wife.
And post E.
I know my wife. There is before you, and then there's since you. And I can tell you, as the significant other of this wonderful lady, there's just this passionate, marked, just change in conversations that we have and stuff. And this is after her mentor,
Such a
Mike
spring in
Hackman,
my
had,
step since you came.
well, no, her mentor, Mike Hackman, had passed on. He got cancer. Fuck cancer, by the way.
Thank you.
But you get unmoored, I'm guessing, and finding a kindred spirit, I think, is one of those things that just I was reading some research on happiness even, and that's one of those things that you have to be, if you're going to increase your happiness levels, you've got to find people that you just get along with, that are kindred.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just
Told you, bromance.
You're on the same.
How we do.
You're not identical, but you're swimming in the same waters, and you're not on a different continent. You're. I'm sure we've all had those experiences, but
Yeah, when I came to interview at the university, Liesl's one of the first people I met. And, there was two things that sealed the deal, basically, when it came to this position. It was Liesl and then the End Center. Because our then chair, drove me down to dinner, and he's like, let's just do a quick stop. And we stopped at the Colorado Springs, the End Center at UCCS. And I was like, okay. Between realizing that I have like a simpatico kind of connection with Liesl and that, this is such a beautiful place, I was like, I think I can do this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And we should explain for anybody that doesn't know,
mutual.
the End Center for the Arts is this, how would you even describe it? It is, it's an architectural kind of like...
Expression. It's an expression of art.
It's a building that isn't a building. It's like a piece of art.
Yeah.
It's like, it's this silvery... what's the shape? It's almost like a
spherical, not totally spherical, but it's
like
organic.
It's organic.
Organic,
It's almost
yeah.
like a Gaudi maybe or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's like it's we were talking about art in our last episode. This center would fit.
It makes
that.
me think of like an
it's-
ocean creature or something.
Yeah, it's
Interesting.
and
Yeah,
it's
that's
got
a great
art all
observation.
around it, and it
Yeah.
has pieces and sculptures, and
Yeah.
they've spent millions of dollars, not of taxpayer money. I think it was a lot of donors. I think huge donors gave to this
I
thing.
think Pam did.
And it is really kind of, when you drive off of that Nevada Avenue right there, it just stands out as
Yeah.
like,
It does.
it is like the shining little
Yeah.
piece of art that itself is just, we've gone to see performances and,
You guys cannot go back to art this time. You did art. You did art, and you did it.
did.
You did
isn't,
it.
We did it.
Isn't
Up and down.
leadership an art a
Yes.
little bit? Isn't leadership
They
a bit
just
of an
did a
art?
3-part,
Yes.
2.5-part series.
2.5-part
on art.
series on
But
art.
no, when Elena did come out and she did her teaching demo on campus for part of her interview, it was in my ethical leadership class, and the students were blown away. In fact, we went out to dinner with one of the students that was in that class, and she was a former YouTuber who had just a little YouTube channel.
Just a little.
But
She's world famous.
we had dinner with her downtown just last week, and she was asking how's what's that person? And I said, you mean Dr. Svetieva? And she said, oh, she was so amazing. I am so glad that she was the one hired. And I said, she is amazing. She's there and teaching authentic leadership, and got her tenure all secured and doing her research and kicking ass and taking names. And she said, oh, she just blew us away that day. And I'm like, and it just stood out in her mind.
Yeah.
And so you made such an impression on the students.
Yeah, that was a
day.
striking comment, don't you think? Because the person you're talking about doesn't give out.
No, the person.
she's like, she is a very
Yes.
business like.
Yeah. She does.
Transactional.
This is what I did to my employees. To stand out, it was very interesting.
No, she does critical commentary and things like that. That's her area, and so she's really critical of
MLMs and things like that.
She does a lot of critique is her area, and she was just saying how compelling she found your lecture that day, and just how much you stood out in her mind.
Yeah.
And that was my moment to try and kind of marry, all the research I had done on deception and leadership, and then kind of make it appropriate for an ethical leadership class, which,
Yeah.
I was like, I think I can do this.
Which we need
You
more
did.
than ever. Yeah, we need
Mission
this.
accomplished.
Yeah. That's
And then I,
fantastic.
of course, fell in love at that moment. I'm like, I have to have her.
Is that something you shared with?
Yes, I
Okay, I
did.
just
I'm
wanna
not.
know.
I
Don't worry.
did.
I'm not a
It's-
defended or triggered.
No,
I'm very
not at all.
comfortable. with
Yeah.
Everyone
that
in the
setup.
department felt the same, and
Yeah.
we're just all so lucky to have you.
Yeah.
Well, just a small correction. I don't have tenure yet.
Oh, okay.
That's not,
Oh, okay. We're
Soon to be. I'm
but
sure.
right at the cusp. So tell us about the Honesty Project that you have. That you've got your website, and you have the Honesty Project that is an avenue for your research. And I just am so interested in that, because that's ongoing and something, as you mentioned, you're just really interested in. You have such a sleek website. It's beautiful. You do photography too. So tell us a little bit about some of that.
So the Honesty Project I would say that right about 2021 is when I started, I don't know, maybe I was having a midlife crisis of some kind. But I realized I had been studying deception for a really long time. And, I was always thinking, what do people look like when they're lying? What are the indicators of lying? And then at some point I was like, I don't think I'm asking the right question anymore. I'm like, why is it that we struggle with being honest in the first place? So it was kind of almost a philosophical shift in terms of my research interests, like moving away from asking, how can we spot deception, to asking, why do we lie in the first place? And I was specifically interested in, the leadership implications of that. Why is it that leaders struggle to tell the truth? Most people are good, and most people, when they struggle to tell the truth, it's for really benevolent reasons. They want to protect you. They don't want to hurt your feelings, and so what's that?
Great point. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just something that I wanted to explore. And so what I did is I did an initial set of interviews just with leaders I could recruit from any level, any field. I just kind of like snowball recruiting as much as I could. And I just got these just really fascinating insights into, what it is that they struggle with when it comes to being honest with their followers. And remember, this was 2021 also, and we were kind of on the heels of the pandemic. And, as you all remember, when the pandemic first kind of was ramping up, the directives were like, well, don't mask up, you don't need an N95, all that. And then later we found out that was a benevolent lie in order to make sure that we don't make a run on masks and not leave enough for, front care workers and people who really needed them. But unfortunately, that ended up really compromising the trust that people had in the CDC. And so even though it was a really totally justifiable misdirection or lie, or, it was totally justifiable, but it had some actual long-term consequences that I think ended up being worse. And that is that people didn't necessarily trust the directives of the CDC anymore. There was also, vaccine hesitancy was ramping up, and that. And so that was kind of like the milieu of, this kind of research. Like, why do we do this? I'm not saying that everybody should be honest all the time, leaders included. That's certainly never been my point. But I did want to unpack that a little bit and just go like, okay, can we really ask some questions around this? Like, what is it about, honesty that we struggle with it so much?
Sorry.
No,
I just wanted to comment on that because it's interesting, especially as it relates to the pandemic, something that it is very much in most people's minds still as being the most recent circumstance where there has been a lot of trust, and we can dive into trust as it relates to what is currently or presently happening. But speaking of saying something to protect others, it kind of goes back off that funny statement of, I never lie, I only participate in a willful act of misinformation. And it's really interesting because it speaks to having power and wielding that power, where have you in your studies, have you noticed that there is a correlation between the impact even a small let's just say misdirected statement can ultimately have, such as this example with the CDC, where it undermined trust moving forward, where the question then of vaccines has really proliferated in the spectrum of most people now distrusting anything, where we talked about this with experts. Experts are basically being dissed constantly, and now trust is being used as a weapon in some ways of, I don't have to I don't have to meet you on the same intellectual plane to explain why I don't agree with you. All I need to do is plant seeds of distrust, and I undermine you immediately.
Right. I mean, and I don't know. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Did the CDC actually, was there like an intentional effort, or was it an unintentional? Like, I always was hearing about like the Wuhan like Wuhan was, that's the origin. Well, it's just a gigantic question mark. I don't know that we still even know, even now, if it really was the locus, right, of where the virus came from. I think it was, there's guesses and hypotheses, but there's never really like this definitive video evidence that, here's the worker and here he was carrying a vial out of the, that just doesn't, right? Diseases don't work like that, right? They can kind of emerge out of almost thin air historically, right? They can kind of they can be spread by any number of people. I mean, we studied, even in our classes, like Typhoid Mary, they didn't even know who was doing this, with spreading diseases in those circumstances. So it's so interesting to see how deception can be perceived. In one context, is it like a purposeful lie? And yet in another, it may not even be a willful act. It might be an unintentional, you just were presenting the information you knew at the time, and it maybe was later proven wrong or inconsistent or just science, right, is the idea that you keep collecting.
But
right?
would that even be categorized as deception then? Because it's
so
a different
we really
thing at
are
that
talking
point.
about something that is tactilely.
I think that's the intention is what would define as deception.
Yeah, okay. And so there's a great discussion to have is like when you're talking about authentic leadership, right? This idea of like what makes an authentic leader.
We hadn't even gotten there yet. You're jumping the shark.
I'm sorry, I'm jumping the shark a little bit.
My favorite sport.
But the idea of deception goes to the self-awareness issues. It goes
we
to
will
those.
get there.
I know.
Honey, you're jumping. You're jumping.
Can I just
He can't help himself.
I'm sorry.
I know he's so excited.
He's so excited he cannot control himself.
Look at him.
I'm living this every day with kids, and so I'm in the petri dish every day with the kids. And
Okay, can I ask you a question?
Yes. Yeah.
How do you define honesty, and are you honest with your kids?
Okay, so yes and no. There are times
Kids do not
There
watch.
are times that I need to be honest, but I have to, especially if I can pull them alone and I can have a one-on-one conversation with them. Yes, I can be 100% honest with them, and I can couch language in a way that's not going to like crush their little spirit and stuff. But in front of the class of 30, no, I cannot always be, you're 3 grade levels of reading behind Ricky. I'm making up names. Little Janie, you have skipped school for the last 2 months, and you're angry that you didn't come up. There are times when you have to be a salesman. You have to be God help me for saying it, a politician. Yes. Ugh. We're gonna have to probably take a break so I can throw up.
Yeah,
but no, you literally have to just. Leadership is this idea that you have to figure out the real human art of when you can and when you cannot be honest with people. And so maybe the greatest leaders are the ones that can navigate those choppy waters in a way that, I think of Churchill, right? He couldn't tell.
So that would be that benevolent intention that Elena is studying. Is many times deception has a benevolent intention.
Many times. And, when I've interviewed leaders, when I ask them to talk about honesty, they give exactly the same answer. Yes and no. They're like, it's not like I'm not being honest. It's just like everybody has their truth, right? And I'm like, okay.
The white lie, the white lie.
Yeah.
Well,
everybody sees it as a spectrum, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I was just going to mention it kind of goes off of the same prospect and the concept of you're on a need-to-know basis and you don't need to know. So omission becomes part of deception.
It's like utilitarian for the greater good. I would do this.
Correct, which is also, which direction I was going to take this.
Yeah,
into.
I know. Don't go
aliens?
there, you damn aliens.
Are you going alien?
I did not say it.
Or are we going
Damn
to your AI
aliens.
girlfriend already?
No. Just aliens. Just aliens.
Okay.
I keep some things private.
One or the other, Admar. I know.
God.
But no, it's actually kind of interesting because there has been a lot of movement in those topics with the congressional hearings and such. And I'm genuinely interested to see whether or not there is a whether there is a clear indicator of deception that can be identified. Hey, that person is clearly looking to misinform, omit, and steer the conversation in a different direction, to create a faux sort of image of what is true and what isn't. So, and I've actually, read about some of these circumstances, but it's interesting because oftentimes with those congressional hearings, look at the Congressional Budget Office doing their hearings, and you actually get to listen to where the money is going, and you kind of think to yourself, well, that person is clearly lying. Like, it's obvious.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think it's obvious to many people, and that's the kind of comical and ironic part about it, right? Like, you see a lot of individuals just kind of being very careful in how they talk. Nobody's persuaded. Like, you're not persuaded by that. And also trust levels are in free fall anyway.
Yeah.
So we don't trust what people say. And so it becomes this kind of pantomime where they just come out there and they just make sure they're very careful not to say anything that could get them into legal trouble or other kinds of trouble. And you don't believe it, and I don't believe it, and nobody believes it, and the theater show is finished, and we all go back to our daily lives.
To the daily lives and continue kabuki theater. Yeah.
What's interesting to me as well is I don't know if the value of the truth is, I mean, it seems like it's so devalued that I don't know that we even care. And I say we, but the collective we. But because I don't know if the truth is held in as high regard. I don't know what the stock is anymore.
But I think we've consciously made at least an effort for us in our journeys. I mean, I won't speak for you, but I'm assuming yes. We've made this. That's why we've named this podcast the Prime Directive. We want to not be eyes closed. We want to be. I know this crew here. Seems like the crew. That's what we are. But we really want to go towards truth, even if it's painful, even if it sucks. Part of the only way we're going to ever get out of this this darkness we're kind of in right now is you got to go towards the light, even if you got to go through the fire and the alligator pit and everything else. You kind of need to head towards that. And if you don't, the consequences seem to be that at a societal level, we're in a malaise of just, I love that way you put that, pantomime. God, we're watching a show that we're in, but we're watching it while we're in it. And so it's almost surreal. Yeah. It's like we're in a Dali painting or something like that. We really are just in this warped, surrealistic thing that we know it's not real, but we would rather turn to that, or a percentage of humanity and Americans would rather turn to that than to just be honest with ourselves. I guess it's the old denial ain't just a river in Egypt, right? Human beings will do whatever it takes, in many cases, to not leave the cage of their own constructed.
We're back to Plato's cave, huh?
Oh God, right?
But I think it's
we're back to Plato's cave.
But it's even like more. I think I've heard it described as, we've created sort of a frictionless society. We're always telling people what they want to hear. We order things at the press of a button. We get frustrated at the mildest inconveniences, and I think that frictionless society is also intolerant to honesty, right? Yes. Because honesty is unpleasant. We even talk about honesty being like the brutal truth, or, let me be brutally honest with you. I'm like, who said that honesty has to be brutal? We said it, and we present it as like an unpleasant thing. And just like every other unpleasant thing in our lives, we've gone, let's get rid of it. Let's make it really nice, and let's make sure we're always telling people exactly what they want to hear and what they're ready to hear.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of become...
And so on the left...
Thin-skinned.
And you can also see that this is the greatest weakness at this moment of anybody politically coming from the left. That culture of weakness and that culture of over-tolerance, is that what we're really... I mean, it's like this, somebody comes waltzing in naked into a meeting and you're like, well, it's just his truth. Or, no, it gets to a point where it's like, this is ridiculous. This is absurd, right? So,
is he talking about you?
Yes, I was talking about Admar in our last meeting leading up to this episode.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, really, just a
really
hat and
awkward.
Shoes?
It was
Put
awkward.
on some pants.
Pretty awkward.
And you didn't seem to mind at the time.
And why the SpongeBob SquarePants socks? Come on, man. Come on, buddy. No. So it's just fascinating to me. See, so you said blood pressure goes up. That was one of the tells. Is that right? Of deception, blood pressure can go up.
Oh no, I would never sit here and tell you guys that there are tells when it comes to deception. And being in the lab for 6 years, and also, hi, Mark Frank, if you're listening.
Of course he is.
Send it to him.
We've been a very united front that there is no Pinocchio's nose when it comes to deception. There are no indicators. And the reason is, by the way, we're kind of really smart. Humans are very smart. Like, even if I was to tell you, this is an indicator of deception, we'd find a way to countermeasure that.
Yeah. And it doesn't seem to work in all circumstances.
Absolutely
right?
not. I think it's a fool's errand to think that you can spot deception.
It's so interesting you say that, because I'm so cliche, but I love, true crime. And like most of America, I like to watch that. And
me too, to relax.
I know, exactly, to get away from the turmoil.
Let's watch a serial killer show to relax from the news.
Exactly.
It's like what Hassan Minhaj said during the White House Correspondents' Dinner. The reality of everything is so awful. I've been watching House of Cards just to relax.
Exactly. To drown myself in something. And so I watch it, and I'm trying to figure out if this person has done it or not. Are they guilty? And I'll watch them be interrogated, and I don't know yet if they've done it. And I'm always like, no, I think they probably haven't done it. I think they're probably innocent, because I always give people the benefit of the doubt. And then it turns out they're completely guilty. The evidence will show they're completely. And I'm like, gosh, they completely snowed me. I did not see that coming every time. So I would be the worst, because I am unable to spot a liar ever.
There is only one tool that we all have to be able to spot a liar, and it's something that you can deploy. That's the one that I will definitely advocate for, and that's rapport.
Yeah.
Talk to a person, ask them questions, ask them good questions.
Or maybe experience, like of what you've seen in the past. Is it a good predictor of the future?
It may or may not, depending.
Yeah.
There was some interesting research actually that. So in general, people are really bad at spotting liars, but there was one group that was quite good, and they were like children that had grew up in like abusive households, essentially.
Interesting.
And so the theory goes that they were very attuned to like really
EQ things.
Yeah, like they could notice vibe shifts, just because they grew up in such precarious circumstances. And so really they just had a lot of like communicative empathy. Like they
survival
could really
skills.
Yeah, they could really notice like shifts in somebody's behavior and all that. And in general, when somebody changes a little bit how they're talking, that's usually a sign that deception may be happening. So they are very good at detecting deviations from baseline. They had to survive their households, right?
Yeah.
If dad's going to become really angry, you need to be able to know when that's happening so you can escape, right? So that's actually one group that tends to be a little bit better at this. But again, it's because they're tuned in, they're listening, right?
Yeah.
They're not just looking at whatever,
Interesting. If I may, just a quick question as a follow-up. Was that true across the board, spotting in those inconsistencies, or was it only with those particular family members that they've built that rapport with, so they can sense just by the tone of their voice whether or not that person was maybe in a precarious state themselves, or whether or not they're actually trying to be deceitful or sort of like...
Oh, I know what you're asking, but no, it was actually just watching new people
wow.
Criminals, whatnot. So there's some good kind of videos that we have for the purposes of research. I know my dear friend and colleague Leanne Brink. She's done a lot of research using, confessional videos, or like she also uses videos of people who are pleading for the return of their family members, and for some of them they were behind it, and for
Susan Smith, my God, that's right.
And for others they were actually innocent. So so she's collected those videos, and she can use them to see how good people are at detecting deception. So there are those videos out there. You can use them, but yes, they're not just good at the family members. That's their training grounds. They can then use that to spot deception in others. And again, they're not spotting deception, then they're spotting changes. They're spotting vibe shifts.
Yeah, inconsistency.
It's almost like they've got that sixth
sense that they've developed.
They're
which
reading the room really closely.
Exactly.
And maybe
Interesting.
future good teachers.
Yeah.
Middle school teachers, we need people like that.
Yeah.
too.
yeah.
Did your dog really eat your homework? And,
No, I didn't.
You're lying.
See,
Did
speaking
you
of
trash the bathroom?
Again?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know.
At that particular point, I guess the old Russian proverb of trust but verify really comes into being.
Can you
Say
say
it
it in
in
Russian?
Russian.
Can you say it in Russian?
Actually, no, I can't. I'm gonna have to learn that.
Can you say it in Serbian?
No, Bosnian.
Bosnian, sorry.
Veruj, ali provjer.
By the way,
There you
we're
go.
with multilingual people,
yes, we
both speaking together in their
We're very humbled.
Serbo-Croat.
I can't even speak English right.
Yeah.
Join the club.
We're joined by people that
Do you mean
Very
speak
humble.
English correctly?
Yeah.
That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
No, the only other language I think I can speak a little is music. That's the kind
Well,
of
you
That's
speak
a universal
That's the
language.
one that-
Yeah.
You're
Well,
conversational in Spanish.
and with Liesl, it's the language of love.
Oh.
Oh, do tell more.
Yeah, it's the
Okay.
language of love.
That's how you fell for him.
Yes,
Yeah.
he was so fluent in the language of
I
love.
was eating a corn dog, being a corn dog
Right.
myself. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
His massage moves.
Oh my god!
So
really
bad.
gotta go there.
So bad.
One of our first
You
dates
seem
was
so tense.
one of our first dates was one of
Whoa,
our
somebody got handsy.
He did, and I was like, I'm not tense.
I am now.
I'm very tense at this moment.
One of our first dates was the most embarrassing moment of my life.
terrible.
I could have
Worst.
just, my God. Well, I had fallen in love with Liesl, but I just,
Yeah,
I couldn't do
terrible.
it. So I was drunk.
It was
I was completely
terrible.
drunk. I'm
No.
like, my God.
Okay,
Really?
so Elena, I wanted to ask.
I was trying to be
you-
deceptive.
I'm trying to. Do you see the segue? Do you see the
I
segue?
was enjoying the segue.
So one of the things that interested me too on your website was that I saw you were talking about, like, one of the more recent posts was something about honesty in AI with leaders. And I just thought that's so relevant, so timely, but how leaders have to really confront this, how to be honest with AI, like using AI in different contexts, and both embracing but also being honest with it. And this is something I'm really trying to reconcile with, how to use it, how to be honest with its use, and how to, share policies with students in terms of honest use and incorporating it. And I know we're being challenged more and more to use it, teach students to use it, but I want to make sure I'm guiding that honesty and that, owning its use. But in the corporate world, I know that they're just embracing its use full on. And so reconciling that with academia is just something I'm not sure how to bridge that yet. Are you dealing with that a lot, and how to do that?
I mean, it's interesting you talk about, in the business world, there was, just in the fall, we were kind of in a group setting, and, there was a CEO there, and he was just loving how it's really cut down, the time that he needs to create communications, to create like reports and things like that. And so it was like full on embracing of AI and just kind of loving the efficiency. And I think in the business world, especially if you're, in the executive suite, like, when you see that efficiency, it's like, oh my God, that's exactly what I need. Now, the post that you're mentioning is, I talk about using AI to create communications. So whether they're internal or external. And the post is a lot about how, effective communication is about connecting with your audience. And in some ways, you kind of have to go through the effort of putting the words together in the syntax that kind of reflects you and who you are. And it's through that you kind of also formulate your thoughts and formulate like your opinions and strategies. And if you're just kind of like skipping that step and just kind of letting some AI do it for you, you're actually missing that piece of the communication. Now, in that same meeting, by the way, somebody else said, oh yeah, our CEO uses AI for their communications, and I can totally spot it, and I just ignore it and then delete it. And so I'm like, this is that moment, right? Like, we can tell when something is AI written. I'm not saying I have 100% accuracy, but you know how I know something is AI written? Because I'm bored by it.
Yeah.
I'm unengaged by it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's too sequential.
Yeah.
It's too
refined.
almost
And it says
chronological.
nothing almost.
Yeah.
It
It's
has
not
no
personal.
voice.
Yeah.
Like you can't hear a voice
I
there.
agree.
Like you can't hear anything there.
Yeah.
Now we had this problem back in the past. We were always telling executives, don't use cliches, don't use corporate jargon. People glaze over, like nobody wants that. And now we have this thing like AI, which is, like cliches are its jam. Like corporate jargon, it loves it because it's pulling. If you have a distribution of all the word usages, it's pulling everything from the middle, right? And so it creates boring text, unengaging text.
It's a living, walking bell curve. It's like an It's like
right
an
in the middle.
Yeah.
amalgamated bell curve.
Yeah.
Algorithm that's just Ugh. And that's
so-
kind of it can be okay. So if you're somebody who is on the bottom end, if you're a learner or a CEO who doesn't know what the hell you're doing, it might help you get you to 50%.
100%.
Which is
But then
concerning to think.
Which is concerning, yet the world we're living in.
You're a CEO who
But
doesn't
then-
know how to
But then it
message.
can't get you
No, it cannot.
to the
those-
Right.
next level where you need to be.
where people are like actually listening to what you have to say and are committed to your vision and are willing to do what you want them to do.
The authenticity that is got to be there for a leader to succeed.
Yeah. So, with our students, like something that is really important to me is I'm like, you have to write because writing is how you develop thought.
Yeah.
If you don't write, you will lose the capacity to think. And we're
Yeah.
already seeing this, right?
Yes,
Critical
kids-
thinking levels
and
down.
oh god, and this is in the K-12 system. We're de-emphasizing writing. We're doubling down on standardized testing, which is killing me because it just I mean, we used to. When I think about what we used to do with blue books, I don't really remember blue books in college. You had to handwrite all your papers. You couldn't type up your papers. You had to handwrite these things, and so you'd spend 3 or 4 hours in the testing, class, humanities class, or whatever it was, and you had to keep going.
I don't even know how to hold a pen anymore. I mean, I get a
My
pen
writing
and
would be unintelligible.
yeah, mine too. I try to hold a pen and I'm like, I can't remember
This is
how
a skill,
to hold
and
this
we know
thing.
from our research in the K-12 system that when you do this and you're connecting to the formations of the letters and the symbology goes into your brain and then through, you have a deeper connection, a more emotional connection. Kids perform better, they retain more. And so when you don't do that, you end up in, here we go again, the theater. I love that pantomime. I'm gonna steal that from you. I love
Please
that,
steal
because
freely.
you're watching yourself do the reading again. You're not really engaged. You're just going through the motion.
Join us on this path, let's ignite the blaze. So grab your headphones tight, let's go for a ride. With every spin and twist, we'll cut and run and hide. The Prime Directive where the laughter's alive. Society's reflections, let's help each other thrive. Politics and culture, oh what a blend. Join on the journey and let's set the trend. As we close the chapter, lend us your ear. The Prime Directive's calling, so let's pass that beer. The Prime Directive where the laughter's alive. Society's reflections, let's help each other thrive.